The world where magic is everything. Imagine a world where magic is not just common, but mandatory, where simply not being able to cast a spell can mean your death sentence. Welcome to the world of Mashly, magic and muscles. In a society completely shaped by magic, a human being's worth lies not in their character, their actions, or their virtues. Here, someone's worth is measured by the strength of their magic. From birth, every person receives a mark on their face, a magic line, which indicates their affinity for arcane power. The more marks, the greater the magical power. Children with 2 marks are considered geniuses. Those with 3, prodigious monsters. But what about those with no marks at all? They are not considered people. They are called aberrations, failures, errors of nature. They are rejected by society, persecuted like walking diseases. Many don't even survive childhood as the magical system treats these individuals as threats to the natural order. It doesn't matter if they are good, it doesn't matter if they are kind. Without magic, you don't exist. And the cruelest thing about all this? The system that created these rules is also the one that benefits from them. The magical elite maintains its rule with an iron fist, masking its tyranny under the guise of meritocracy. Through a title known as Divine Visionary, only the most powerful and promising students are chosen to directly influence the world's structures. They are considered demigods on Earth, politicians, judges, and warriors. Those who achieve this title are guaranteed not only glory, but the power to shape laws, monitor citizens, and decide who deserves to live or disappear. This is the cruel world we're thrown into at the beginning of Mashly. A place where kindness carries no weight unless it's accompanied by magical power, where a gentle smile is worth less than a basic levitation spell, and where hope for change seems like a joke. But the universe loves to play tricks on the very system it creates. For in this world ruled by spells, a boy was born who had no magic, no mark, no chance. And yet, he survived. Isolated from the world, hidden in a cabin in the forests farthest from civilization. While other boys practiced fire spells or flew on enchanted broomsticks, he trained his muscles. He pounded rocks into dust. He ran for miles with weights strapped to his legs. He lifted trees as if they were dry twigs. This boy's name is Mash, Burn Dead, and his destiny was to defy all of this. But before we really get to know Mash, we need to understand who is behind this system. At the top of the magical government stands a cadre of wizards, known only as the Evaluators. They observe, control, and ensure that order is maintained. Anyone who deviates from the norm is hunted down. This government disguises its cruelty behind rigid rules, magical academies, and an illusory meritocracy where only those with magic have value. But the truth is simple. They fear the unpredictable. They fear anything that deviates from their formula. And that's why someone like Mash could never be accepted. But destiny, my friends, has muscles, and he's about to punch the logic of this world. This is no ordinary tale of overcoming. It's not the story of someone who awakened secret powers or found a legendary magical artifact. This is the story of someone who simply wouldn't accept the absurd as truth, who looked at the injustice of a system and responded with a punch in the face. And it all starts with a simple question. How did someone without any magic manage to fool the entire world? Mash Burn Dead, the boy who defies destiny. In a world where magic defines life and death, where every baby is born with marks on its face as a seal of worth, a boy was born with nothing. No mark, no blessing from the universe, no mercy from the gods. But perhaps he had something even rarer. Peace. Deep in a remote forest, far from magical towns and cities, stands a small moss-covered wooden house, surrounded by tall trees and absolute silence. No magical tower, no floating portal, no sound of broomsticks cutting through the sky. Only the constant sound of weight being lifted. That's where Mash Burn Dead lives. A boy with platinum blonde hair, fair skin, expressionless eyes, and a comical seriousness. Mash doesn't care about magic because he's never had any contact with it. For him, his routine is simple. Wake up, do one-finger pull-ups, lift entire tree trunks, run 50 km before breakfast, and eat his beloved cream puffs. Mash doesn't know what a spell is, but he knows perfectly well how to balance a dumbbell on his chin while baking a pastry in the oven. He can't fly with magic, but he can leap 10 feet in the air with a single bound. He hasn't learned any incantations, but he can crush a boulder the size of a wagon with a handshake. Mash lives with Regro Burndead, an elderly, frail man with glasses, a soft voice, and a constant expression of concern. Regro is the man who found him abandoned in the forest, unmarked, unidentified, and without a future, and raised him as if he were his own son. He knew the risk he was taking by hiding a magicless being, but the bond between them was stronger than any decree. Regro taught Mash to live in hiding, to never leave the forest, to never be seen. After all, if anyone knew, it would be the end. The system doesn't forgive those who defy its rules. Mash, innocent and calm, never fully understood the danger he was in. For him, it was just a normal life, and his main concern was always the next batch of cream puffs. His heart is simple, his body is devastating, his mind completely literal. But everything begins to change one ordinary day. Regro leaves for the village to gather ingredients. Mash, as always, remains at home, training her muscles and preparing sweets. However, tension begins to rise in the village. A group of magical police officers was circling the area. One of them, an arrogant man with a sharp gaze, was named Brad Coleman. When he noticed a lonely old man repeatedly coming to town but never mentioning a son, he became suspicious. He discreetly investigated and soon realized something was wrong. Regro, upon returning home, is pale. His hands are shaking. He tries to hide it, but Mash notices. "Dad, did something happen?" "Mash, you need to hide. They're watching us." And then, at night, the house is broken into. Brad enters with other agents, using magic, to trap Regro and surround Mash. But what they didn't expect is that the unmarked boy wasn't afraid. He was just confused. You have no marks. How are you alive?" Brad shouts in shock. Mash just replies, "You're disturbing my dinner. Please leave." One of the agents casts a spell, a fiery spiral attack. Mash looks, dodges, with a step. The spell hits the wall. He advances at absurd speed and, with one punch, destroys the agent's wand as if it were made of plastic. "What?" Brad, overcome with anger and ego, casts a containment spell, enveloping Mash in magical chains. "You are a mistake, a freak. People like you must be erased." Mash, still calm, flexes his arm muscles. The chains tremble, crack, explode into shards. "You yelled too close to me. That's not polite." With a single step, Mash reaches Brad and, with 2 fingers, pushes his body against the wall, not violently, with authority. "I don't know who you are, but nobody touches my father." The agents back off. Brad, humiliated, is ashamed. And then, he makes a perverse proposal. He realizes that Mash isn't an idiot. He's a monster, magicless, but strong enough to rival the best wizards. He proposes, "You want to protect your father? Then, listen to me. If you join the Easton Magic Academy and become a divine visionary, we can pretend you're a wizard, and your life goes on. Refuse, and you'll both die." Mash looks at Regro. The old man cries. Mash, seriously, thinks. "Jim, do I need to wear a uniform?" "Try. Is there dessert?" "Probably." Mash stands up firm. "Okay then, I accept." And so begins the most absurd farce this magical world has ever seen. A boy without magic, pretending to be the greatest wizard of his generation, to save the man who gave her everything, to maintain the right to live. And with that, the world is about to be shaken, not by spells, but for a punch. The proposal: enter an elite magical school. With a deal sealed by blackmail, Mash Burndead, the boy without magic, was about to be thrust into the heart of the magical world, the prestigious, selective, and cruel Easton Magic Academy. A school that only accepts the brightest, or, in this case, the best disguised. Entry into the Magic Academy is not simple. For Mash, who's never seen a city before, much less a floating castle, everything is absurdly strange. The streets are filled with people flying on broomsticks. Streetlights turn on by themselves with magic. And the school gates are so high they make the walls of a kingdom look like toys. And it is right there, in front of the gigantic Easton Gate, that Mash stops, sighs, and says, "This gate doesn't open by itself?" Without ceremony, he walks to the gate and with his bare hands, lifts the entire gate, as if lifting a pot lid. In a world where everyone relies on magic even, to open doors Mash is a statistical error, an absurdity, a threat. But he doesn't realize it. He just smiles shyly and keeps walking, as if everything is normal. The school's entrance exam begins. These are complex magical tests, challenges that require conjuration, control, and technique. The other candidates proudly demonstrate their spells, creating dancing flames, fields of ice, and colorful illusions. Mash, on the other hand, doesn't understand anything. An instructor shouts, "Create a floating energy sphere with your wand." Mash looks at the wand. She picks it up as if it were a toothpick. She remains silent. The examiner starts laughing. "What are you waiting for? For the sphere to appear on its own?" Mash shrugs, picks up a rock from the ground, kneads it into a perfect ball, and throws it into the air with such precision that it spins in the wind. The examiner remains static. That was magic?" Mash responds, "Try." Mash doesn't blatantly lie. He just answers everything with such literal seriousness that no one knows if they are being tricked or taught a new, unknown form of magic. Another challenge involves levitating objects. Candidates float statues, furniture, and instruments. Mash simply throws the object with force and catches it before it falls, creating the illusion of aerial control. In the final test, he must summon a magical creature. The others make splendid appearances: fire eagles, stone golems, winged serpents. Mash, on the other hand, draws a paper doll and places it on the floor. The examiner shouts, "That's not a summons!" Mash responds, "But he's here, isn't he?" Yet, something curious happens. All the examiners, despite the logic screaming, "This is fraud," sense something powerful coming from Mash. His physical strength, his presence. It's as if he truly possesses an unusual magic, a kind of aura no one can decipher. And so, to everyone's amazement, Mash is approved. And so begins your journey into the Easton Magic Academy, a place where status and magical blood define everything, where nobles walk with their heads held high and commoners are treated like servants, a place that would soon learn that muscles also speak loudly. Mash is assigned to Adler Dorm, known for welcoming common students without noble lineages. His classmates view him with suspicion, but it's on the first day of school that chaos begins. A noble student, Lloyd Cavil, irritated by the lack of respect he feels from Mash, who simply doesn't respond to his provocations, decides to make an example of him. Lloyd uses magic to throw books at Mash, knock him out of his chair, and even try to immobilize him with simple spells. Mash, however, remains expressionless, until Lloyd crushes one of his cream puffs. And that's when Mash broke his first rule, because nobody messes with his candy. Without raising her voice, Mash walks over to Lloyd. Her classmates hold their breath. Mash comes closer and squeezes Lloyd's head with a single hand, as if she were holding a ripe lemon. Lloyd's protection spell breaks. The ground shakes. The professor rushes in and sees Lloyd passed out with his head buried in the wall. Mash just wipes his hand and says, "He tripped." Suspicions begin to arise. This boy, he's strange. Does he have magic or not? How did someone like him pass the tests? But since he's in the low-status Adler dorm, few really care, and those who do try to confront Mash don't last long. In the following days, Mash continues his routine as usual. He gets lost in the hallways, gets irritated by automatic doors, unknowingly overturns spells, and trains in secret. During a spell practice in the open field, the teacher orders everyone to create stone columns with magic. Mash, instead, punches the ground with such force that an actual column rises. The professor's eyes widen. Mash just says, "My wand was failing. I decided to use a plan B." And so the rumor begins to spread through the corridors of the academy. A mysterious, expressionless student of Adler's who uses physical magic and defeats everyone with a simple punch. The magical world begins to tremble. And you haven't even noticed yet. The School of Magic and the absurd challenges within the walls of Easton Magic Academy, magic is everything. Every step a student takes, every meal they eat, every conversation they have, everything is influenced by their bloodline, their mark, and their magical strength. And in the midst of it all, there's a boy who understands absolutely nothing of what's going on. Mash Burndead, even after being accepted as a student, remains a walking enigma. He doesn't conjure, he doesn't float, he doesn't glow. Instead, he opens doors with his shoulder, punches his way through magical labyrinths, and corrects spells with brute force. But he doesn't draw attention to himself on purpose. Mash just wants to go unnoticed, eat his cream puffs, and avoid causing a fuss. Unfortunately, this is impossible. The social divisions of academia. The school is divided into 3 dormitories. Adler, where the common students, the less prestigious ones, are. Lang, the elite, noble, cold, and ambitious. Orca, focused on logical and intellectual magic. The rivalry between them is fierce, and students like Mash, who don't demonstrate genuine magic, are treated like jokes. And worse, Mash doesn't understand the provocations. He ignores them with a comical composure. One day, a Lang student casts a paralysis spell on Mash from behind, attempting to humiliate him in public. Mash freezes for a second, then shatters the spell with a sneeze. The student falls hard to the ground. Mash just says, "I think he tripped over his own pride." The new allies, the beginning of an unlikely group. Mash soon meets Finn Ames, his roommate at Adler dorm. Finn is Mash's complete opposite, insecure, nervous, and always trying to follow the rules. But strangely, he takes a liking to Mash's calm, destructive demeanor. At first, Finn is afraid. Then, he admires her. Over time, he grows respectful. Mash defends him from bullies, saves him in practical tests, and unintentionally involves him in completely surreal situations. Soon after, Lemon Irvine appears, a student who falls in love with Mash almost instantly after he saves her from a trap during an exam. She believes Mash is her destiny, which leads to hilarious situations, because Mash knows absolutely nothing about tior, romance. She follows him around, prepares lunches, interferes in classes, and Mash always responds with the same neutrality. "Are you going to eat this?" Later, we meet Dot Barrett, an impulsive, explosive, and incredibly competitive student. Dot has a hero complex, is always talking loudly, and tries to impress girls, and is deeply irritated by Mash for being so indifferent. However, after passing a practical test together and Mash effortlessly saving him from a deadly situation, Dot finally recognizes his own strength. He still tries to prove himself stronger, but deep down he already knows he's dealing with a monster on another level. Completing the group is the mysterious Lance Crown, one of the rare students with 2 magical marks, a genius. Cold, calculating, but with a strong sense of justice. Initially, he sees Mash as an anomaly, but after witnessing his exploits and realizing that he doesn't use magic yet still defeats everyone and everything, he begins to question the system itself. So, slowly and improbably, Mash forms a group. A circle of diverse, eccentric, but loyal friends. None of them fully understand what Mash is, but they all know that with him, they are safe. The classes and the disconcerted teachers. During classes, Mash continues to leave teachers, perplexed. In levitation class, while everyone else is trying to control floating objects, Mash ties invisible strings and pretends the feather is flying, so perfectly that the teacher gives a standing ovation. In transfiguration class, the students try to turn frogs into roses. Mash simply throws a rose on the ground and hides the frog. The professor, confused, accepts the maximum grade. Mash doesn't try to fool anyone. He just finds physical solutions to magical problems. And for some reason, that's enough. But it's not just the teachers who are baffled. The academy begins to notice this unusual student. Students begin to talk, and rumors spread. Did you hear about the boy who broke a containment spell with the blink of an eye? They say he summoned a dragon with his fists. I think he's related to the directors. None of this is true. But no one knows how to explain Mash. And in the world of magic, what is not understood is feared. First signs of a major confrontation. Mash begins to attract dangerous attention. Influential Lang students grow suspicious. Stricter teachers begin to watch him. Mash Burndead's name begins to spread beyond the school corridors and ascend to the halls of power. He's officially a student, one of the best in his first year, but still, an imposter in the world of magic. Mash still doesn't understand that. He's shaking the foundations of an empire. For him, everything is very simple. Train, eat, and protect those he loves. But the wizarding world doesn't accept simple. The wizarding world wants control. And where there's control, there's no room for someone like Mash. Magical trials, battles, and humiliations, with her silent footsteps and thunderous punches, Mash Burndead begins to leave a deep mark on Easton Magic Academy. Not a magical mark like the others bear on their faces, but an invisible mark, one born of doubt. After all, how can someone without magic defeat so many with such ease? Classes. Progress. The challenges intensify. The academy is no ordinary place. It's a continuous testing ground where students must prove their magical worth daily. Those who excel accumulate golden coins, known as merit coins, which bring the student closer to the ultimate title. Divine. Visionary.emash? Well, he doesn't even understand what these coins do. The examination of coins, the first great test. The first practical assessment involves a magical resistance test. The goal is simple: create a protective barrier and resist automated magical attacks. The students position themselves on individual platforms. The magic cannons activate. Blasts of energy, flames, ice, and lightning fire in succession. The most skilled students create magical fields, defensive spells, circular enchantments. Mash? He stands still. The explosions hit him directly, but they don't do anything. Not a scratch. He looks confused, scratches his chin, and asks, "Is this part of the test?" The professor observes his platform, which remains intact. Sensors indicate 0 damage. The grade? Top marks. The duel with Silva, the first official battle. But it doesn't take long for Mash to be forced into a real duel. The challenger is Silva, a second-year student known for his sadism and impactful magic. He provokes weaker students to easily climb the rankings, and seeing Mash being praised by the teachers, he feels it's time to put the newbie in his place. Silva summons his magic. Colossal magical arms that strike with monstrous force. He is fast, cruel, and meticulous. Mash, as always, waits in silence. The first attack comes with fury. The magical arm comes down like a sledgehammer. Most of the students would flee. Mash, he holds the magic hilt with one hand. Is that your strongest move? Silva tries to launch a sequence. Explosions, thrusts, impacts. Mash dodges, blocks, holds, twists, and then points her finger at the ground. With a light touch, he shatters the entire arena. The magical structure trembles, cracks, and Silva falls to his knees, defeated. Mash? He scratches his head, takes a cream puff from his pocket, and says, "Was that a practice or a class?" The rise and discomfort of the nobles. Gradually, the school's nobles begin to see Mash as a threat to the status quo. A boy with no marks, no lineage, no magic. overtaking students from established families? This cannot happen. A group of Lang students, led by Abyss Razor, begins investigating MASH. They want to find evidence, flaws, or any excuse to remove him from school. Meanwhile, MASH continues to earn coins, passing practical tests with solutions, as absurd as they are creative. In a levitation test, where he had to cross a chasm with aerial magic, MASH throws himself with a rock. In another, where he was required to create a magical shield against an ice attack, he simply uses an enchanted pot lid he found in the cafeteria. To his teachers, he's a misunderstood prodigy. To his peers, a living legend. To the nobles, an anomaly that needs to be contained. Strategy without knowing it is strategy. MASH never acts out of arrogance. Everything he does is out of necessity. If someone attacks him, he defends himself. If someone challenges him, he responds. But the impact of all this is greater than he imagines. Other students begin to question the system. Why can only those with magical bloodlines be leaders? MASH doesn't have magic, but she protected us from advanced spells. Maybe the power isn't just in the brands. Little by little, MASH is inspiring change. No speech, no protest, just with punches. The group test and the strength of friendship. MASH is called to a team trial. His group consists of Finn, Lemon, Dot, and Lance. The task is simple in theory. Invade a magical dungeon, overcome the obstacles, and capture the sacred artifact at its center. In practice, a death trap filled with enchanted monsters, illusions, poisons, and shifting labyrinths. MASH leads the team, without knowing he's leading. He carries his companions on his shoulder when they are tired, breaks down walls to avoid illusory mazes. Take on a 10-foot elemental monster and defeat it with a spinning kick that would make even a Saiyan look twice. And when everyone thinks the artifact is locked by an unbreakable ancient magic, MASH picks the lock with a paperclip. Why? Because he thought it might be faster this way. That day, the teachers declared that MASH's group was the most efficient, but deep down, no one could explain how. Fame and growing discomfort. By this point, MASH is already known in all 3 dorms. Students comment on their achievements as legends. Did you see what he did in the dungeon? They say he knocked down a golem with a flick of his finger. Does he have ancient magic sealed? The Academy, albeit reluctantly, begins to recognize MASH as a real candidate for the title of Divine Visionary. And that, deeply, irritates the powerful. MASH never craved attention, but now, he's become impossible to ignore. And the more he shines without magic, the more the magical system feels it's in danger. The question hanging in the air is simple. How long? Until someone tries to stop him for real? Infiltrators, plots, and the threat of the Lang dorm. In every kingdom, in every empire, there is always a group that believes itself superior. Not by its actions, but by its heritage. At Easton Magic Academy, this group has a name, a face, and a brand: the Lang Dormitory. Cold, ruthless, haughty, and now interested in MASH Burn Dead. As MASH begins to rack up achievements and merit coins, he also begins to attract the attention of the school's most dangerous eyes. And among all the students, one observes with peculiar attention: Abel Walker. The absolute leader of Lang Dorm, Abel, is different. He's not just any bully, nor a spoiled nobleman. He is a prodigy in manipulative magic, with his own ideology, icy charisma, and a tragic past. For him, magical society is corrupt because it allowed the weak to mix with the strong. Abel believes in an absolute order, where the weak must serve and the strong must rule. And how does he measure strength? By magic. Only by magic. MASH, for Abel, is not just a different student. It's an affront, a boy without magic, defeating nobles, breaking records, and inspiring others to defy the rules? Unacceptable. And then the silent operation begins. The puppeteers, the cruel. Face of Order Abel brings together a select group of students with similar ideologies, known as puppeteers. They use puppet magic, but not figuratively. They literally transform other students into puppets, controlling their bodies, overriding their wills, and forcing them to serve the Langdorm as servants. Several students mysteriously disappear from the hallways. Others return, mute, rigid, with empty eyes. Mash hears the rumors but doesn't understand right away. Maybe they're just training for a play, until one day, Finn disappears. The first shock with Abel, Mash discovers that Finn was seen entering a closed-off hallway. She goes there and finds a dark room full of students tied up, paralyzed, literally turning into dolls. Abel appears. Dressed in Lang's uniform, elegant posture, calm smile. Mash burn dead, the error that walks. Mash walks up to Finn. Did you do this to him? Abel holds up a finger. Finn levitates in the air like a wind-up toy. He chose the wrong path. Now he's a puppet. He'll serve better this way. Mash, calm as ever, closes his eyes. He takes a deep breath. You can believe whatever you want, but if you touch my friend again, and then he disappears. In the blink of an eye, Mash crosses the room and slams his fist into the floor. Energy explodes. The ceiling shakes. The puppets fall. Abel recoils in surprise. Mash holds Finn in her arms and protects him. I'm going to break you into pieces so small you can't even glue them back together with magic. But Abel is not just any enemy. He smiles. And for the first time, he strikes back. The ideological Clashabelle conjures colossal puppets, each formed from the souls and bodies of imprisoned students. They attack in unison, using coordinated magic, forming a wall of magical attacks. Mash faces each one with brute force. A flamethrower? He throws it at another. One shoots ice? He uses it as a shield against the third. Does one invoke gravity? He lifts his own puppet and throws it back. The hall becomes a war zone. Mash doesn't use magic, but his blows cause shockwaves so intense that they break spells through sheer kinetic force. Mash doesn't fight for fame. He doesn't fight for merit. He fights because he hates seeing people treated like things. Because, even without understanding the spells, he understands what is right. The origin of Abel, the enemy with a purpose. During the fight, Abel begins to get excited. He reveals between blows that he lost his mother because he trusted weak people, that she was murdered in an accident caused by someone without magic, and he swore never to allow the weak to govern or decide anything again. He wants to reform the world by force, with pain, with obedience. Mash, upon hearing all this, simply says, "Just because you suffered doesn't mean you have the right to make others suffer too." And with a final punch, he knocks down the last puppet. Abel falls to his knees. Mash walks up to him, her hands covered in dust and her eyes serene. You can use magic to control bodies, but you'll never control someone's heart. Not even the world can do that to me. Liberation and the birth of a legend, all dominated students are freed. The school goes into shock. The directors are forced to discreetly investigate what happened, but they know Mash is now a dangerous name. He challenged Abel Walker. He won. And then he walked away like nothing had happened. If Mash was a rumor before, now it's a real threat. In the eyes of the elite, Mash Burndead is no longer just a student without magic. He is the beginning of something that could destroy the entire structure of the wizarding world, and for that reason, he must be eliminated. Not in tests, but in secret, from the inside out. The confrontation with Abel and the fight for justice. The walls of Easton Magic Academy no longer whisper. They scream. The name Mash Burndead is no longer just a curiosity in the hallways. It's an earthquake, a harbinger, a danger growing silently, and threatening to shatter the foundations of an entire society based on magic. After defeating Abel Walker and freeing the students who had been turned into puppets, Mash thought all would be well. After all, the enemy had fallen, the innocent had been saved, and the school should, in theory, recognize the value of her actions. But the truth is much more bitter. The silence of the superiors, the confrontation with Abel should have led to a public investigation, exemplary punishments, and rule changes. But none of that happens. The board of directors of the Easton Magic Academy remains silent. Why? Because Abel is the son of one of the influential members of the Magic Council, and Mash, a boy with no bloodline, no mark, no legitimate proof of magic. The system doesn't want to reward Mash, wants to hide it, wants to contain it, wants to silence it. The magical world doesn't just fear what is strong, it fears what it can't control, the awakening of collective consciousness, but not everyone keeps quiet. The freed students begin to tell their stories. Mash is mentioned as the only one who protected them. Other students, previously neutral, now ask themselves, if he without magic can do all this, then what really defines someone's worth? Maybe the system is wrong, and slowly, ideas begin to change. Not by words, but by testimonies, by actions, by honest punches to well-established lies. Abel, still standing. Meanwhile, Abel, even defeated, remains at school. Hurt, humiliated, but reflective. He doesn't understand Mash. Everything you've learned tells you that the weak must obey, that the powerless must disappear. And yet, there is this boy who was supposed to be inferior and who defeated him effortlessly, without hatred, just with conviction. Mash doesn't want to humiliate anyone, just protect. And that idea breaks something inside Abel. When the enemy who defeats you reaches out his hand, you are forced to rethink everything you believe in. On a silent night, Abel appears before Mash, sitting on the training field, eating his cream puffs under the moonlight. Mash looks at him. Do you want one? Abel hesitates. He sits next to her and accepts. The two eat in silence. There was no apology, no pledge of allegiance. But in that simple gesture, something was sealed. Abel would never be the same again. And Mash would continue on her way. Without understanding the depth of the steps she was taking, the elite observes as rumors grow within the school. The elite of the wizarding world begin to move. The High Council of Divine Visionaries, the most powerful and influential magicians in the land, gathers. A report is delivered. Mash burned dead. Student of Adler Dorm, no visible magical markings, unbelievable physical power, responsible for interfering with Langdorm activities, defeated Abel Walker, walked away unharmed, displays no conventional magic. The verdict? A threat that needs to be assessed or eliminated. Mash doesn't know it yet, but he's no longer fighting his peers. He's being watched by the most dangerous eyes in the world, Mash and the bonds that make him different. Amidst the growing tension, Mash remains the same. He continues to go to class when he doesn't get lost on the way, eat his candy, train in secret, and protect his friends, Finn, Lemon, Dot, and Lance. They now follow him not as colleagues, but as a family forged in battle. Mash doesn't talk about revolution, but when someone suffers, he acts. Mash doesn't make speeches, but when he sees injustice, he intervenes. Mash has no ambitions for power, but the world begins to project hope onto him. The strangest thing is that Mash doesn't understand any of this. For him, everything remains simple. But for others, he is the spark of inevitable change. The magic system is based on tradition, blood, and fear. But now, there's a crack. A crack with platinum hair, sculpted muscles, and a discerning palate for cream puffs. And maybe, just maybe, this crack is the beginning of a collapse. Because the world can ignore screams. It can silence protests. but it can't pretend it didn't see when someone with no magic whatsoever defies all its pillars and remains standing. The future of the wizarding world and MASH's legacy. It doesn't take a throne to change an empire, nor magic to shake the world. Sometimes all it takes is someone who doesn't play by the rules, someone who doesn't understand limits, someone like MASH Burndead. The Easton Magic Academy continues to operate as if nothing had happened. Classes continue, tests continue, teachers pretend to be normal, but everyone knows something has changed. The name MASH Burndead now circulates throughout the halls, from shy whispers between students to tense conversations between elders. He defeated Abel, defied the logic of magic, inspired others to think. Reports. Reach the top in the shadows, the most powerful figures in the magical realm watch. The Council of Divine Visionaries is already aware. Some believe MASH is a danger, others think he could be a valuable weapon. But everyone agrees on something. If this kid keeps growing, the system won't hold up, and that's when a plan emerges. Test MASH. Expose him publicly. See how far you can go, and, if necessary, delete it. The silent prophecy and the weight of the name. Long ago, an ancient prophecy was forgotten among the pages of history. When the world forgets the value of effort, one will emerge who will remember it with his own hand, without scars, without talent, but with enough strength to destroy logic. No one knew if it was real. Nobody wanted it to be. But now, she has a face. MASH is unaware of any of this. He continues his daily life, running through the fields while carrying 2 friends on his shoulders, training punches against stones that turn to dust, failing at spells, because there's simply no magic, and between one training session and another, savoring your precious cream puffs. The bonds he created, and what they represent. Finn, the fearful friend, now walks more steadily. Lemon, once obsessed, now learns to trust. Dot, the impulsive one, now defends him. Lance, the prodigy, now respects him deeply. They don't follow MASH out of fear, they follow by choice. Because in MASH they see something rare, someone who, even without magic, never backed down, never cheated, never changed. Someone who lives within their means and protects it with everything they have. MASH may not know how to recite incantations, but she knows how to recognize pain. She knows when someone is in danger. She knows what is right, even without understanding politics or hierarchy. And that's why he begins to become more than a student, more than a threat. MASH starts to become an idea, the path to the title of Divine Visionary. With the accumulation of merit coins, MASH is already one of the names eligible for the title of Divine Visionary. The system, which once mocked him, is now forced to acknowledge him. But this title, once merely a means of protecting his adoptive father, now represents something greater. If MASH can become a Divine Visionary, he can change laws, protect the marginalized, defend the unmarked. Teach the world that value isn't born of bloodlines, but of the heart. And maybe he doesn't even know it. But the world is about to learn from him, a storm in the distance. As MASH advances through the academy, danger also advances in the shadows. Other visionaries, ancient clans, mages who master forbidden forces. They watch. They study. They wait for the right moment to attack, because MASH is no longer invisible. He's the boy who defied the system, and the system now responds with fear. In the end, MASH never wanted to be a hero, never wanted fame, never wanted to change the world. He just wanted to live in peace with his father, eat his sweets, and train his muscles. But the world didn't allow it. And when the world pushes someone to the limit, it responds. And when that response comes from someone who knows no limits, the world trembles. MASH Burndead is the boy who has no magic, but has everything the world needs to learn. Mash is sitting in the field under the starry sky with his friends around him. They laugh, share stories, play. Mash bites into a cream puff. Close your eyes, smile. Good thing there was one left for me, and in that simple smile lies the whole revolution. The magical world is changing, not with spells, but with muscle, with courage, and with the unshakable conviction of someone who, even without any gift, never accepted injustice as the norm. Mash Burn Dead has arrived, and the world will never be the same again. What did you think of all this? This was the recap of the first part of Mash and I Say More continues. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. See you next time.